Hey guys, welcome to the Tower of Babble Game of Thrones Breakdown. Today we'll be discussing Season 4, Episode 1, Two Swords. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza. Say what's up. And I'm Julian. And for those of you who have just joining us for the first time, this is a Game of Thrones podcast, obviously, but we're dealing with the show as a show and not as the books. So I've never read the books. Daniel, you have. Yep. But we're not going to do any spoilers for future episodes of Game of Thrones, because if you do, I will murder you in your sleep. So good thing we got that out of the way, but just a couple more housekeeping things. Make sure to, obviously, if you haven't not listened to us on iTunes, subscribe and rate us on iTunes or Stitcher. Check out our website at Game of Thrones, not Game of Thrones, towerbabblepodcast.com. That's BABBLE, podcast.com. So now we got all that out of the way, we can jump right into this episode, because damn was I excited to get back into Game of Thrones. It's been months and months and months, and it didn't disappoint, but it wasn't definitely wasn't one of the best episodes of the series. But
no, it wasn't huge. There were no real gigantic game changers, but no. It was really kind of touching base with everybody after.
Almost everybody. We left out Stannis and Melisandre, and then I think. I said this when I tweeted out after the episode, which, by the way, the Twitter for Tower Babble is Tower Babble Cast, at Tower Babble Cast on Twitter. I tweeted out that it was just a lot of table setting, putting things, reminding us where people are and what they've been doing, I think, which is necessary as a television show, but kind of sucks that it needs to be done. I think if this was done as like a Netflix series, not that they would have the same budget or anything like that, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do that kind of resetting and all that kind of stuff. You could just continue the story, like how House of Cards does it, where season 2 picks up literally minutes after season 1, and they don't bother trying to catch you up to everything that's happened, right? So I don't necessarily appreciate that, but I understand its necessity. But we did start with a cold open, which only happens once in a while in Game of Thrones. I think only a few episodes have had it. Obviously,
I'm pretty sure the first episode of every season does it.
I don't know if last season did. But other than last season, I'm pretty sure 1 and 2 did for sure. 1 for sure did, because that's the most memorable one in my mind, with the White Walkers setting all that stuff up at the very, very, very beginning of the series, for the series premiere. But this one started with showing Ned Stark's broadsword, called Ice, right? That's what he named it?
Yeah.
Being melted down into not one, but 2 new swords. One for Jaime, and then one presumably for Joffrey, although we don't see him get it in this episode, right?
Yeah.
So the big deal here is that it's Valyrian steel, right? So Dan, can you tell us why Valyrian steel is so important?
Well, it's essentially one of the few Valyrian swords that are left in the world. They're very rare after the Doom of Valyria. So that Valyria is where the Targaryens and the dragons and most of the magic in the world is from.
Okay.
So it's said that Valyrian steel is also infused with certain types of magic. It's stronger than regular steel. It's sharper. It doesn't dull. They're just badass swords.
Okay. And they did say that there's only a few smiths left in Westeros that could work with Valyrian steel, right?
So I think he said there's only 3 left in the world, not in Westeros.
Okay.
But yeah, I think at one point each of the main houses had a family sword that was Valyrian steel, and a lot of them have been lost. There aren't too many left. Jon's sword that the Lord Commander gave him is also Valyrian steel.
Oh, okay. So wait, the Lord Commander gave him that? I thought he got that one from his father. No, or am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, the Lord Commander gave it to him instead because his son Jorah was exiled, right?
Yeah. Okay, then that's the one with the cool white lion thing or something on the top. Bear. Okay. Yeah. So the scene is pretty short, but the Rains of Castamere is playing behind it, which is in a very slow, somber kind of way, very reminiscent of the Red Wedding from 2 episodes ago. But other than that,
it moves right. Tywin's just smiling over the ash.
Well, yeah, very creepy. And he even throws a wolf's pelt in there, which we assume is the one that Ned always wore around his neck.
No, that was the sheath. That was ice.
Oh, okay. That's what that. Okay. I like that he called it later ridiculously big or unnecessarily large.
Yeah.
So anyway, moves right into the opening credits, which are still the best credits on television. But we got 2 new locations: the Dreadfort and Meereen. Right, that's how it's pronounced. Meereen.
Meereen, yeah, and neither one of them are actually in the episode.
Yeah, which is weird. It's like they added them in. I think that's one of the first times that's happened.
I thought it was weird too. The thing that's weird, the Dreadfort was mentioned last season. Meereen was mentioned in this episode, but it hasn't been beforehand. But so Meereen was mentioned because Daenerys is on her way between Yunkai and Meereen. She's freeing slaves and doing her thing. That one kind of makes sense. The Dreadfort, that's where Theon is right now, but neither him nor Ramsay nor anybody connected to that story was in the episode.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's almost impossible to touch on absolutely everyone.
Yeah, sure. I just don't know why they introduced that into the title sequence so quickly.
Well, I guess because like we know because they talk about not Ramsay's dad. What's his name? Roose Bolton. They mention him. They don't mention the Dreadfort in this episode, but they mention Roose Bolton being the Warden of the North now. So they show the Dreadfort and they move right into showing the dismantled Winterfell, which it's still smoking, of course. So I guess that just to give context, I guess. But either way, it's just weird to show it and then not have it seen. Although it has technically been seen just from the outside once before.
No, only from the inside, I think.
No. They showed it from just the very, very like just the wall of it. Remember when they pretend to let him escape? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that was technically the Dreadfort. You just didn't know it at the time. So after that, it starts with again King's Landing, and we have Tywin and Jaime discussing. He's getting the new sword, obviously. But I saw someone online make a mention that saying giving a new sword to someone who just lost their sword hand is like giving someone a new pair of boots to someone who just lost their leg. Yeah. Which I have to agree with. It's kind of like it's a little harsh, kind of funny.
I think Tywin had planned on doing that before he knew that Jaime lost his hand.
Yeah,
and it is kind of more symbolic than anything else.
And I was like, this thing is like, unless swords are like hockey sticks, and only like if you have a right-handed sword, it can't be used in your left hand, which I don't think is true. So I like that when he gets the metal hand, which I'm jumping ahead a little bit, he gets that gold hand placed over his stub. That he's like a hook would be more practical. Which I thought would be funny. Which I thought was funny. And when he waved with the arm at the end, that was pretty good too. Okay, so
but then, Jaime refuses Tywin's order to go back to Castle Rock, and he chooses to actually keep his oath to the Kingsguard.
Well, he makes a mention that every time they ask him to break an oath, they asked him to break an oath for the betterment of the family. He ends up being called like an oath breaker or a kingslayer or something like that. Yeah. So this time, for the first time, he says no, but it's really just a selfish reason because he just wants to stay closer to Cersei, right?
Well, that's part of the reason, and Brienne is kind of getting to him like that. What he went through actually changed him more than just physically. Like he that's the first time he's ever like said no to his father like that, and it's the first time he's actually considered his honor, whatever remains of it.
Yeah. Well, and then he's the old Jaime probably wouldn't have even kept her around, so that's got to mean something, right? So the scene's great. Obviously, any scene with Tywin is great because he's just he's just so badass. But what really stuck out to me was the scene with him and Cersei, which which I think comes later. I'm not sure if it's
like halfway through some point.
But and that has the disgraced what's his name? They have it written down here. Anyway, it has the disgraced Meister Qyburn from Harrenhal, which is you have these small characters brought back and just thrown in there. You don't barely even notice them.
Well, he came back with Jaime and Brienne.
Really? What?
Yeah, he came back with both of them after they left Harrenhal.
Oh, right.
He's the one who like fixed Jaime's hand and well, not fixed it, but like he tended to it, and
Yeah, and then they okay, that makes sense. And did we ever find out last season why he was not a Meister anymore? Or did they just kind of?
They kind of mention it as he's talking to Jaime, that he used to like to experiment on the dead.
Ah, okay.
He justified it by saying like you want to find out what happened to these people, you gotta find people who are really sick and are going to die anyways, and kind of run these experiments. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he's kind of crazy.
He's like the mad scientist kind of deal, yeah.
So okay, Tywin asked Jaime to go back to Castle Rock to kind of like man the fort, I guess, right?
Dude, yeah.
What does that mean? Like, so he'd have to leave the Kingsguard, right?
Yeah.
Or be honorably discharged.
Joffrey would have to, kick him out.
And then he would go back and be like the Warden of the South?
Warden of the West.
Of the West, okay. And you just kind of sits there and deals with whatever's going on.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of stuff going on there as well, just with their bannermen. And Tywin's very obsessed with his legacy, right?
Yeah.
And Cersei can't, and Tyrion isn't worthy in his eyes. So Jaime's his only hope, and Jaime was never supposed to be a Kingsguard in Tywin's eyes, and Aerys did that to keep Tywin from going to war against him, because then he could just have Jaime killed.
Oh.
Mad King appointed Jaime to that Kingsguard. It was a whole thing, but yeah. So he appointed Jaime to the Kingsguard so that he would have Jaime close to him. That way Tywin wouldn't betray him.
Okay. Well, that didn't seem to work out very well for him.
Yeah.
So then moving on. We have Tyrion with Bronn, and they're waiting for the Dornish to arrive, and we have yet to see any Dornish people on the show. I mean, maybe we have, but never any significant ones of any kind. So they're waiting for Prince Doran, right?
Prince Doran Martell.
But it turns out he's not coming because he's sick, quote unquote. Called in sick, and they're on their way for Joffrey's wedding, right?
Yes.
And then we find out that the Prince Oberyn Martell, the second son of the big Dornish family, is actually the one who's in King's Landing and actually came the day before. It's more of a funny scene than anything else, with Bronn cracking some jokes as he usually does.
Yeah, Bronn's got some great quotes.
Yeah, what does he say about his diplomacy? But it's either way. Tyrion kind of gets. Apparently, the Dorns don't like the Lannisters very much. Is what I got out of this episode.
Well, I mean, not a lot of people like the Lannisters, but the Martells especially have a reason not to, as Oberyn explains later on in the episode.
Which I'm for sure gonna have to ask you about, because I'm not super clear about that whole thing. So then that next scene is in the brothel. With pretty much every episode of Game of Thrones takes place at least one scene in a brothel.
The obligatory tits and ass.
Yeah. So we have Oberyn, the man-slat Oberyn, which they still call it, what he's been known for.
Is that what he's
Well,
called?
essentially, what do they say? Known for fucking his way through Westeros or something like that.
Yeah. Very passionate person is what the actor described him as.
Okay. So in this scene, there's something that stands out for me. First thing is that Tyrion, well, other than the obligatory tits and ass, was that Tyrion turned down sex for the first time in this episode. If you were to plot an arc for him, he's literally completely different than he was at the beginning of the series.
Yeah, absolutely.
He turned down sex at the brothel, and then he does it again later in the episode.
And he didn't. It wasn't even painful for him to turn it down at the brothel. He just no, I'm married.
He shakes his head no, and Bronn's shaking his head yes, which is great. So we see Oberyn essentially stab. Well, not essentially. He stabs a Lannister through the hand at the brothel.
Yep.
He has no patience for Lannisters, obviously. So can you explain why that is?
Well, he explains it to Tyrion later on when they're talking. It's a little bit complicated, but Oberyn Martell and Doran Martell's sister Aria was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, who's the son.
What? Okay, start over. What?
Okay, Oberyn's sister Aria was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, who's the son of the Mad King.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Daenerys' older brother, not Viserys, but the elder brother. Okay. He's the one that Robert killed at the Battle of the Trident.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So they were married and they have kids together. They're a happy little family. But Rhaegar wasn't in love with her and actually fell in love with someone else.
Okay.
Who I don't know if they've done it in the show or not, so I don't know if I want to tell you.
Okay,
or not.
So
it's not a huge deal actually, but whatever.
Just don't. If you're not sure, don't say it.
Yeah. Falls in love with someone else, and that whole thing happens, and that's what starts the war. Actually, no, they definitely have said it in the show because that's the whole reason the war starts. The person that he fell in love with was Lyanna Stark, which was Ned's sister.
Oh, okay. Is that the crazy one from the from... Is that the crazy... No,
She wasn't in the show at all.
no, she's not in the show
She
at
was
all?
dead before the show started.
Okay.
She's the one that Robert was also in love with. That's why the war happened.
Oh, okay.
Because Robert was in love with her and Rhaegar stole her, and then they went to war and he killed her. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the reason that the Martells are mad, or that they hate the Lannisters, is because during the sack of King's Landing, in that war, when the Lannisters came through the gates pretending to be friends and then ended up sacking the city, they had Lannister men, and he named the mountain specifically...
we haven't seen in a while, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He's been out in the Riverlands doing his own thing. But the Mountain and his men sacked the city and raped and murdered Aria and killed the children.
So his niece and nephew.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's also like it's very brutal the way the kids were killed. In the books, it's much more descriptive, but it doesn't matter. It's just they were like ripped.
Well, I think he says that he cut him like vertically, like through the sword.
In the book, it says that the daughter Rhaenys, the elder daughter, was stabbed something like 30 times, like a ridiculous amount.
And this is like a well-known, like people. Yeah. We know this for a fact happened.
Well, these are all rumors, but they are so well known that like everyone like in Dorne or people in the North still know them. Like everybody is aware of this. It might as well not be a rumor, but it is. It's not official.
Okay.
So yeah,
there's no way to know for sure.
The toddler was stabbed a bunch of times, and the baby his head was smashed into a wall. And then the Mountain raped Aria while the brains of the baby were still on his hand, and then cut her in half with his sword.
Okay.
So it's very gruesome and very.
That is pretty okay. So that makes sense. He does. It makes perfect sense why he doesn't like him.
Exactly.
So Oberyn's kind of like a wild card at this point. He's in the city, a little bit crazy, and does not like Lannister. So that, I mean, as a fan, as probably perspective of most people on the show, most people don't like Lannisters, including the people who watch the show, or most of the Lannisters anyway. So having someone who dislikes them as much as most of the people who are watching, obviously, automatically puts him on their side, even though he does seem a little bit nutty, you know.
I don't know. He seemed pretty cool, but the only thing is that he's going to be a headache for Tyrion, and a lot of people like Tyrion.
Yeah, and he's considered a fan favorite out of the books, right?
Oberyn?
Yeah.
He was one of my favorites for sure, yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that's not mentioned, I don't know if they will or not, but the Dornish, the Martells also don't like the Tyrells.
Oh, really? What a great wedding.
So yeah, it's going to be a whole thing.
Okay. So then we can go talk about what's going on in Essos with Dany, with Meereen, but this to me was the weakest part of the episode. It had shades of season 2 boring Dany, a little bit. Just for dragons are a little bit bigger. Well, obviously we get the obligatory dragons being cool, dragons shot of them eating like a goat or something.
Yeah.
We see her kind of like try to touch like Drago and then snapping.
Drogon, yeah.
Is that Drogon? That's what it's called? Okay, so the dragon, but with like a dots on the O? Or how do you spell that?
Well, with an O instead of an A.
Oh, okay.
Drogon.
Oh, okay. So they switched the O and the A.
She named it after Drogo.
Yeah, I know, I get it, but it's like essentially dragon, but you switch the O and the A.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, she's kind of not. She's losing control of her dragon, especially Drogon. He's more willful than the others, and she is kind of scared. She can't control him, and they're still getting bigger, and they're only going to get bigger.
Yeah, it's like grown so big since even the last episode of the
whole
last
thing about
season.
dragons.
It's only been weeks.
The whole myth about dragons is that they'll grow as large as you let them. If you keep them in a small room, they won't get as big. But if they're out in the open all the time, they'll just keep growing.
Okay.
Like lobsters.
Like what?
Lobsters are like that, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really? Well, I don't know. I don't think you get I don't think there's any giant lobsters out there in the sea.
Google it. I think lobsters are immortal too.
I'm pretty sure that's also not possible.
They only die from like diseases, and like by being fished. But if they didn't get any diseases, they'd live forever. They don't have old age or whatever.
How's that possible?
I don't know. Look it up.
I'm gonna look that up.
Look it up. Do it later though.
That doesn't sound okay. I'm not obviously not now, but that doesn't
Everybody
seem to make any sense.
Lobsters are immortal.
All right. So we have. Okay, so Daario and Grey Worm are having a bet who can hold their sword longest. I guess. Kind of dumb. Again, this whole thing, this whole series of events with Dany seemed just filler. We need to see dragons, so we need to have something there
until the end, until they see that little slave girl.
But obviously we have to mention that Dario Naharis was recast from last season, played by Ed Skrein, I think, last season. Now Mikael Huisman. All right. Anyway, this season they could not look
change. Yeah.
They could not look more differently, and not only that, the characterization seems to have completely changed.
Yeah, they act a bit different too.
Which is, it's like, if you didn't have a hard enough time trying to keep up with who all the people were in the show, they just made it even harder by changing characters. It's like, the last time they did this was with some minor characters, or characters we've only seen like once before,
like
barely.
Dondarrion,
yeah, and then we came back later as a bigger role, but they recast him, which is fine. But he had a pretty large role at the end of last season, and it wasn't like a while ago, it was last season.
Well,
now
I don't know what happened. I'm pretty sure the Mountain has been a different character every time he's been in the show. A different actor, rather.
Well, maybe that's why they've been keeping him out, because they don't have someone to play him. We haven't seen him in probably a season and a half, maybe longer.
He's in this season and he's jacked up. Go look up the actor. He's huge.
Okay. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, his brother is huge. By the way, try pronouncing his name. The guy who plays the Hound. Like, the actual actor's name. The
guy who plays the Hound or the Mountain? Because the Hound is Rory McCain or something like that.
Oh, okay, well, maybe it's the Mountain. But I'm listing like the IMDb, and his you're right, it is the Mountain. It's Gregor.
Some like Icelandic name.
Yeah, like half pure Hjuliusson Bjornsson. I'm not even gonna try with that one ever again. You'll never hear me say that name again on this podcast. So then you mentioned it already, but when they're they see the crucified slave on the trail to Meereen, one on every. By the way, how does he know that there's one on every mile marker? Do they check all the way?
Oh, they have scouts riding ahead. Like they have.
Do they have someone all? I mean, I know. I guess they can take a leap of faith. If there's after 50, they're probably like, okay.
Exactly. So a slave on every mile marker pointing towards the city.
Okay.
Inviting her to come and
which is,
fight them.
Again, pretty gruesome, but after what we've seen on the show, actually feels pretty tame in comparison to what we've already seen.
Oh, yeah.
Not only that, I also thought originally that it was just a statue. I wasn't sure at first that was actually a person.
Like gray and stuff, but no, it's a little girl. And it's all because Daenerys is all about freeing the slaves, so this is kind of spitting in her face. So this is how much we care about our slaves.
Do people in Meereen not know she has dragons, or what's the deal with that?
They do.
I know, but like, it just seems like antagonizing for no good reason.
Well, maybe they have reason to be confident.
Well, they do have a giant pyramid there, right? That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So back to King's Landing. We're still dealing with the fallout of the Red Wedding in some degree. So Sansa's obviously pretty depressed. The only thing we saw of that last season was one scene of her sitting in a window crying. Yeah. That's all we saw. So now she's sitting there. She won't eat. You have Tyrion trying to comfort her. This scene was good to me because I think Sansa actually, who's not usually the strongest actor on the show, did a fairly good job. Tyrion obviously is always great. Talking about how he knew Robb and Catelyn. Thought that she said she never met Robb, or she never, is that what?
He never met
Robb, but he's known Catelyn. He's like, oh yeah, but she won't take, hang me, but whatever. So anyway,
I feel like all Sansa does is cry. It pisses me off.
Oh, Dan.
It's understandable. It's just annoying. In the books too, she's just annoying.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, what can you? She's literally from season 1. She was annoying, but now I feel like she has reason to be. I guess. She hasn't had opportunity for growth. Like, what is she? How and where can she possibly grow? She's been confined in King's Landing for so long now, not able to really be free. She is essentially a slave for all intents and purposes. So, the scene that follows, though, has Tyrion in his chamber, and then Shae. Everyone loves Shae. And this is where he turns down sex for the second time, but now this time with his second wife, I guess.
Yeah. Because it's too dangerous. Because he's been telling her this whole time that they can't, and now she feels spurned by him.
Then she blames him for that whole scene in the last episode of episode 10 of season 3, where what's his name, the bald guy,
Varys
comes to her with that sack of diamonds and tells her to go to Essos and buy a house. So she thinks that, or at least I don't know if she thinks that anymore.
Yeah,
but
she implies that Tyrion is behind that he's trying to like subtly get her out of there.
Yeah, and obviously she yells because which woman doesn't when she's angry.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as Tyrion always usually is, he was right. And then you have Cersei's spy out the door, or handmaiden, or I guess essentially a spy.
Yeah.
We find out that she comes later and tells Cersei about what happened. We don't know what he says, but you can assume that she overheard everything, and then which probably isn't good news for Tyrion. Either way, I can't stand Shae. I think she's, when I talk about Sansa being a poor actor, Shae has got to be the weakest of all the actors on the entire show. Her accent isn't believable to me. She just comes off as being completely artificial, and I just don't like her at all.
Don't like her much either, but I don't know. I think Yara's worse.
Yara,
Theon's sister. That one is just so like day and night from the books, and just like so like no emotive, like not.
Well, yeah, and her motivations seem odd too. It's like that last in season 3, the last episode again. I keep referencing it again because it's the last episode, really. But she does this whole thing about he's my brother and I have to go save him. And it's like we didn't no sign. They had one scene together where they had like a heart to heart at Winterfell before that, and then all of a sudden she's like.
Other than that, she was a dick to him.
Yeah. So like, why do you give a shit? And then so it's like, I agree that the characterization of Yara is poor, but I don't think she's a worse actor than Shae is. Anyway, the important thing is there that Cersei's spy overheard that whole argument.
Yeah.
So then we have, like I said, Jaime and Brienne. They're talking about Brienne reminding him about his oath he made to Catelyn. So Dan, what was that oath again exactly, and why is that important?
Well, originally his oath was that he would bring the daughters back to Catelyn and keep them safe. Catelyn's dead now. His oath is really just to keep them safe.
Okay, so
both the daughters, though.
Well, and he assumes that
where Arya is.
Yeah, He assumes that is dead.
Yeah. Most people do.
And then we see Sansa, and she's like, running through the woods for some reason. Seems weird to me. I guess she feels like she's at risk of something. I'm not sure, but she's confronted by
Sir Dontos.
Dontos, the guy who she saved at Joffrey's birthday, or name day as they call it there in Westeros. But I thought that was a touching scene. It was good to see him touched on again. He's not just a once and gone.
Throwaway, yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming he's not going to play a very large part in the series, but it's just nice to see him back again. He's a drunk, obviously, because what else is he going to be? Anyway, I thought that was just a nice scene.
And he gave her some jewelry. He's a drunk. He regrets. He's a knight without honor kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. And then so we see, I think, and we touched on this before, a little bit earlier, but I want to get into it a little bit more. The scene with Jaime and Cersei. Did we touch on that earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're sitting there after Meister Qyburn, not Meister, but Qyburn leaves. They're sitting there, and he's trying to kind of rekindle the romance a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And she completely rebuffs him, no, get out of here. Which is big for a couple of reasons. We know that Jaime, we said, turned down the job at Castle Rock because he wanted to be closer to Cersei. He pretty much was the only reason he was trying to get back to King's Landing was to be with Cersei again. And then you have her, who's to him probably completely changed. She's drinking every scene she's in. She has 3 glasses of wine. I don't know if you noticed that. The scene she's talking with Tyrion for a couple minutes. She has 2 glasses of wine, and then there's the scene with him. She has another 2 glasses of wine in that one scene. So she's essentially a drunk. She's you he just says you just took too long, and it's and you can just see his heart breaking he
did everything he could for her, and then it wasn't enough.
Yeah, and So it'll be interesting to see how that affects Jaime going forward. Where is he? How's he going to rebound, or if he will, or where's he, that's what I'm. Jaime's always been an interesting character. I mean, that scene with him and Brienne last year in the
in the tub
was, or I guess, or that was like spa, I guess.
Yeah.
was particularly good. Like that was probably one of the best scenes of the whole season.
That's the thing about Jaime. He hides it a lot. He hides everything from everyone, but he has a lot of insight, especially into like the history of that time, of that war, and just like the way that he sees the world and the way everyone sees him. They don't match up, and it's really cool when he actually opens up and talks about it.
Yeah. And even here, he doesn't really open up that much. He's just kind of saying, like, hey, listen, I was doing this all for you. You think I wanted to get captured? That wasn't, like, a part of the plan, obviously. And then you come and you tell me that, that's not too bad. Like, so you don't really see much of his reaction to that, but I think we'll maybe see more of that next week, hopefully. So then we go north, and we have Ygritte and the Wildlings, still south of the wall. And then Tormund, I guess, is there still as well?
Tormund Giantsbane, yeah.
Yeah, and she's making arrows or whatever, and then they're joined by another group of wildlings. Daniel, can you explain who these people are?
So these are the Fens. They're somewhat more militaristic than the other wildlings. They actually follow orders. That guy that was in charge with all the weird shit on his face.
Yeah.
His name is Styr. He's the Magnar, which is their word for the old tongue for king.
Okay.
Or I think it's king or whatever. He's the leader of the Fens, and they actually will follow orders, whereas most of the free folk kind of just do their thing.
Okay.
But they're a cannibal tribe from the north. They're supposed to not have ears because they're all frozen off from the frostbite, but whatever, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's like you kind of have to what are you gonna do? Cut off
People
people's
have
ears?
To have ears,
Yeah.
But the whole thing with the wildling tribes is that there's a bunch of different tribes. The Fens are one of the more powerful ones, and the different tribes never really got along until Mance Rayder united them. Mm-hmm. And he united them basically by saying, like, you're all going to die. If we stay up here, we can't keep fighting. We have to join up and get over there.
So, okay. Thank you for explaining that. But my question is, so they talk about, or Jon explains a little bit later that their whole plan is that when the signal happens, they're going to attack the Castle Black from both sides, right?
Yeah.
But my question is, how big is this bonfire that someone on the south side of the wall could possibly see it?
Well, it's supposed to be the biggest fire the North has ever seen.
Yeah, but like... how big is the wall?
700 feet tall.
Plus, it's on the top of a mountain?
No.
In the show, it looks like it's pretty much it's like built on the top of a ridge, and then there's the wall, and
in certain areas it is, yeah.
Yeah, still, like, how, it doesn't seem possible to me. I guess we'll see, but like,
yeah.
The plan seems a little wishy-washy is all I'm saying.
Well, they'll see the smoke, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, maybe then. That makes more sense. Do we have any idea, a general idea of how many actual Knights are actually on Castle Black?
Castle Black, there's not a lot. I don't know the number. I know what it is in the books, but it's less than the show. It's much less than the show.
Yeah, it looks like a skeleton crew up there.
Yeah. But it's less on both sides too, because there's only like 40 of them south of the wall, the Wildlings.
Yeah. And then they have the giant ice wall on the other side, so that's not as okay.
But definitely dwindling numbers. Definitely nothing compared to the 100,000 that Mance Rayder has on the other side.
So we're talking about exactly. So you said that Stannis wasn't in this episode, which actually kind of was like a little disappointing to me because how you left Stannis at the end of last season was really interesting to me. When Melisandre says, this war of 5 kings doesn't matter. It's 5 kings, right?
Yep.
Yeah, doesn't matter if the true war's in the north. So he's like, okay, well, if that's the case, like, I want to know what that means. Like, is he gonna get people up there? Like, what is that? So I don't know. Obviously, not in time to prevent anything that's gonna happen at Castle Black probably anytime soon because they're not really close, right?
No, not at all.
They're on
Dragonstone,
which is
about. It's far south, pretty close to King's Landing.
Okay, well then either way, that there's just no way they could get there in time, even if they were going there. But I'm excited. I want to know more about what's happening with Stannis, somber Stannis, as I like to call him.
Well, that'll most likely be next episode. We'll touch base with them,
and I like to see what's going on. Obviously, like we're at the wall right now, and we didn't see anything from Bran and what's going on with him. But even then, that story's probably the least interesting. least now, anyway. So Castle Black, we have Jon, who's apparently nicely recovered from his 3 arrows that he just got. It was just shot
healed
with.
up.
Although that calls back to the scene earlier with Ygritte and saying that, with Tormund saying that, if he's still walking, it's because you let him.
Yeah, she could have killed him easily, and she knew what she was doing.
So, and he's kind of like on trial for breaking his oath, or for killing another a knight. For killing
Corrin Halfhand, and then breaking his oaths a couple times. Breaking different oaths.
Which okay, so we have this kind of exposition scene where he's pretty much explains everything that happened from season 3, North of the Wall. And he's talking to Janice Flynn, right? Who's the exiled Kingsguard from way back. Like, when did that happen?
Season 2. That's like episode 2 of season 2 that he was exiled.
Okay.
Something ridiculous like that. He's the one that betrayed Ned Stark, though.
Yeah.
And Tyrion's the one who banished him to the Night's Watch.
So he finally made it.
It takes a while, man.
I know. So he makes it up there, and they're all sitting there, and then you have Meister
Aemon,
and he makes that nice comment about, if we beheaded every knight of the Night's Watch who broke their vow or oath, we'd have a castle manned by headless knights, which I thought was pretty good. But either way, he has that. The scene is pretty much just an exposition scene. He's telling him everything that happened. Jon did find out about his brother's death, though. Kind of didn't really react to it in any significant way. Just kind of says, "Oh, I know, I was always jealous of him."
It kind of sucks, but Jon's got other shit on his mind.
Yeah, I know, I get it. But he doesn't really respond to anything ever, really. I don't know if you noticed that. He's pretty cold most of the time.
Well, he tried to leave the Night's Watch when Ned died.
That's true. But he was always closer to his dad than he was to his brother.
Yeah.
So, and then not much happened there. You notice that that Sam has a little bit. Did we even see Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's there for a couple minutes. He seems to have a little bit more influence now than he used to, at least with the Night's Watch. I noticed at the end of last season too, when he's telling everyone to carry him in, and he just seems to have.
Yeah. Well, he's bloodied now. He's been to the other side and come back.
Yeah.
They have to respect that.
Did they?
Also, he's the only one that survived out of that party that went.
That is true. Well, him and Jon.
No, Jon didn't go with them.
Didn't he?
Well, he went with them initially. Then he went with Corrin Halfhand and did their thing. Yeah.
But they went out initially together.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Only a couple of things left to touch on. Joffrey and Jaime. So Jaime's talking about the plan, the protection plan, the Secret Service plan for the wedding. And what's interesting here is you actually see Joffrey being a dick to someone new for a change. Which he's pretty much been a dick to the same people for a long time now. And now Jaime's back, and he always seemed like he had some respect for Jaime to some degree. Yeah. But he seems to, I guess, when he lost his hand, he's lost all respect for him. So they were looking at the White Book, which is what the encyclopedia for the Night's Watch.
It's a book that kind of lists the famous knights. Well, it's supposed to list every commander of the knights of the Kingsguard.
Yeah, the Kingsguard.
I believe it's just the commanders, but I think in the show they just decided to say it's everybody who was ever in the Kingsguard.
I think that'd be a pretty big book. I guess it was a pretty big book, but still. Yeah.
And it just lists their exploits and what they're famous for, and
Okay. And then his is just a half a paragraph.
Because he hasn't done much since he joined the Kingsguard.
Yeah. What else? We touched on this, or Dontos. So,
Arya.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the biggest one. Arya and the Hound.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I guess, but what the best scene? Would you say it's probably the best scene of the episode?
It was a good way to end it.
Yeah.
I think the scene with Oberyn was my favorite, but that was good still.
That was a good scene too. Yeah. This was probably my favorite. So we have Arya and the Hound. They're, I guess, they're approaching an inn or a pub of some kind. Yep. In the kind of northern roads. And they come across a band of, I guess, a bunch of Lannister men.
Yep.
Particularly Polliver, who stole Arya's sword, Needle, back, I guess, at the beginning of season 3 or maybe even earlier.
It was in season 2.
Yeah. So, which is very convenient that they would happen to stumble across them. But there's a couple things that bothered me about it. But
that's the same area that all that fighting's been going on. They're kind of in the Riverlands still.
Okay.
They were just at the at the Twins, and now they're on their way to the Erie. So they're all in that same area where everything's been going down.
Okay. So anyway, they come in there. They head into the pub. So Polliver's with a bunch of dicks, because you know how we know they're dicks, because they're raping some chick in the background. Yep. And then Polliver comes over and he essentially says, "Hey, I'm a giant dick," by saying how much he likes raping and pillaging.
Yeah.
And there's some great dialogue with the Hound saying how much he's like he's gonna have a chicken, and then he wants 2 chickens, then all the chickens, which I thought was really good. So like the tension build up is really great in this scene. So they come in there and they sit down, and he's drinking or whatever, and he recognizes him. Polliver recognizes the Hound, but he doesn't recognize Arya, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then as the scene continues, I guess the tension grows and grows and grows. Then it finally spills over, and there's a pretty cool fight scene with the Hound kicking ass again, although almost not. Well,
it just goes to show, like, characters like the Hound and the Mountain and like Jaime Lannister, they're kind of looked at like superheroes, like they're invincible. But 5-on-1, the Hound still, he can't he hold his own against 5 guys that well,
Yeah.
So that was cool. It was more realistic. He was almost killed. He had to kind of adapt to that.
Lots of punches, lots of face punches, which is cool.
Which, you know what I don't like? I hate, actually, and they didn't do it in this, but it's just like a side note for a lot of action shows with swords, is when someone punches someone with their sword in their hand, but they use their fist to punch them. Doesn't make sense at all.
That happens a lot, actually.
Yeah,
now that you think about it.
It's like you catch their sword with your hand, with your left hand, and your right hand that is holding your sword.
Instead of stabbing them, you punch them in the face.
Their head, like,
yeah.
Doesn't make sense. I don't think that happened. It was more his sword holding their sword, and then he just punched.
Yeah.
But, that's a side note.
just a general gripe with action movies. So then we go, and then we also see then Arya kill for the second time in 2 episodes now.
And the look on her face, like she likes it.
I don't know.
Yeah, she was enjoying that.
You think?
She looked like she.
That was a brutal kill too. That was like.
Well, that was the same way that he killed the Lamy.
Okay. I'm surprised you remember that guy's name, by the way.
There's a little thing at the beginning of the episode.
I know, I did see that, but I just didn't. I don't know if they showed that exact part.
Anyways, did they? Yeah, that's how he killed Lamy, and so she killed him the same way, in like the same dialogue.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually realized or not, but it didn't matter.
If he did, it would have been a little too late for that.
But yeah, she looked like she enjoyed herself there.
Either way, it seems like her depth, like her descent into like darkness seems to be accelerating a little bit.
Yeah.
And she does get her own horse, so that's nice.
Yeah, and also just that's one person off of her list that she keeps.
Was that on her list? Because
Polliver was. I don't know if she ever said it in the show, but he was.
So in the book, Polliver isn't on her list.
Yeah, there's a lot of names on that list.
But in the show, it was only like a couple that she was naming off.
Well, I think in the show, every time she's doing it, like she's always interrupted or she never finishes.
Oh, okay.
So it's like Cersei, the Mountain, Joffrey, like Sir Ilan Payne for killing her dad, and then he's always kind of stopped after that. I think the Tickler may have been mentioned once.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I know his name wasn't said on her list in the show for sure, but if it's in the books and then maybe it just was never mentioned at some point. Yeah. So that finishes off this week. As we said, there's no Bran, no Theon, no Stannis. But overall, what was your thoughts on this episode?
I liked it. I mean, like, I don't know. Again, not mind blowing. There were no huge twists or whatever, but you don't really want that from the first episode. You want to. It was kind of everything you wanted from the first episode. You touch base with everybody. You get a feeling for where everyone is and where they're going. Like you said, it's table setting, right? Mm-hmm. The biggest thing with this season, that for me, having read the books, is it really feels like it was more of a mid-season finale last season. Like, this is all still the third book. This is all only halfway through the third book. It's not at the climax yet. So all this season is going to be the second half of book 3 and the beginning of a little bit of book 4 in between.
Okay, well,
so I'm very excited for where things are going.
Oh, and you probably more excited than me because at this point I'm coming into this season saying a lot of this show feels a lot different after the Red Wedding, as it should. A lot of the main characters that we've been following for 3 seasons aren't around anymore. But yes, I have some idea where some characters are going and what's like. We're expecting Joffrey's wedding soon.
No, you don't.
No. No, that's not what I mean, Dan. You're confusing me. I based on what I've seen, I can say, well, this is where this person is going, or this is where this person is going for this reason or that reason, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, so you have Dany heading to Meereen to free the slaves. You have the you have the royal wedding coming up in King's Landing, and I guess you have Arya heading. Where are they? They're going to the Eyrie?
They're going to the Eyrie.
Okay, so, and then at the Wall, they're preparing for the whole Wildling thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, you don't have any, like, distinct... It's all kind of, like, big ideas. Yeah, so you don't really have any distinct... This is what this person's trying to do, or this is what this person's trying to do at a very minute level, which I guess it's fine for a first episode, but if they don't start getting into it, I think that'll start bothering me, I think. But other than that... I enjoyed it. Like I said, it wasn't one of my favorites, but I pretty much enjoy every episode.
It was a decent mix. So there's a bit of action, and there was some good dialogue and some good like foreshadowing.
Yeah,
it was everything the show is, but just
there was dragons. Someone got stabbed in the throat. There was some TNA, and then and then
but each of those things has been better in another episode. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but. Again, I don't think there's I don't think any of the season season premieres have been particularly great, except for maybe the series premiere. So I mean,
I think
sorry.
No, I can't really remember what season 3 was. I know season 2 I didn't like, but
well, yeah, I didn't really enjoy season 2 as a whole, to be honest. But either way, I think it 1 down, 9 to go. I'm definitely excited about where this rest of this is going. I mean, like, you seem very excited. I don't have, like I said, I have some idea, but I have no idea. Like I'm
very excited because a lot of the actors and the producers and stuff have been saying that they're in every other season, episode 9 has been the big episode, and it's always been kind of building to episode 9, and then episode 10 deals with a little bit of the fallout, and then the next season continues. This season is not like that. It's much less building towards one specific climax, as it's going to be a few steady episodes throughout. I'm pretty sure within the next couple episodes, they're planning. They're saying that it's going to be big. I don't know what that means. I mean, I do know, but I'm saying that I don't
know. Well, that's fine. Either way, I'm excited. We say that a lot. We're excited, but it's because we are.
Yeah, we're always excited about it. I don't care how shitty the show gets. I'm going to like it a lot.
Well, I mean...
To a certain extent.
Yeah, okay. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Make sure to check out our website. Like I said earlier at the very beginning, towerofbabblepodcast.com. That's Tower of BABBLE podcast.com. You'll find... this show there. You also find our other podcast there. So the Tower of Babble podcast, our what do you say, our headline podcast, our namesake.
Yeah,
that
the original.
Yeah, that we do. So if you're interested in Game of Thrones, you might be interested in in comic books, in
some of the other stuff
movies, and all that other kind of stuff. So you might be interested in some of that. So definitely head over there. We're on iTunes and Stitcher as well. So look up the Tower of Babble podcast. But until then, we'll see you guys next week at when we talk about season 4, episode 2. Didn't you know what it's called offhand?
No, I don't.
All right, well, neither do I. So we'll talk about it then. See you guys later. And a quick thanks to Srod Alamanara for the cover of the Game of Thrones theme today. It's the Game of Thrones rock/metal band cover. You can find it at youtube.com/user/Santiago Srod. So SantiaGosrod.